Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My co-host, Daniel Marcus, is elsewhere this evening, but he's coming back. And he started Story Hour just about 2 years ago when we were just beginning all this fun inside time with pandemics and stuff. But it's been so much fun that we've been coming back pretty much every Wednesday ever since. So welcome back to those of you who are joining us again, and welcome to those of you joining for the first time. We do the same thing every week, but it's so different every week because every week we have two writers reading, and writers, let me tell you, there's a lot of variance there. So we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofit, and tonight's writers reading are Juliet Kemp and Cath or Catherine, I'm told both are acceptable, Schaff-Stump. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, please consider a donation to tonight's featured nonprofits, Mermaids and Rain. Juliet Kemp is reading for Mermaids. Transgender, non-binary, and gender-diverse children and teens need support and understanding, as well as the freedom to explore their gender identity. Mermaids reduces isolation and loneliness for transgender, non-binary, and gender-diverse children, young people, and their families. Among its services, Mermaids provides families and young people with the tools they need to negotiate education and health services, helps young people to cope better with mental and emotional distress, which a lot of us are feeling right now, even if we're not in Texas, right? We're all human. And equips their parents with what they need to offer individual support. You can learn more at mermaidsuk.org. Cath Schaff-Stump is reading for the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, usually known as RAIN with two N's. RAIN is the nation's largest anti-sexual violence organization. RAIN created and operates the National Sexual Assault Hotline, which is in partnership with more than 1,000 local sexual assault service providers across the country. That country being the US, not the UK, which Juliet is in. We're international. And RAIN also operates the DoD Safe Helpline for the Department of Defense. RAIN also carries out programs to prevent sexual violence, help survivors, and ensure that perpetrators are brought to justice. You can learn more at rain.org. If you're here at Zoom, please feel free to leave your camera on. It can be nice for the readers to just see the people who are here and interact a little bit. And chime in on the text chat off on the right if you like. If you're joining us on Facebook, thank you. We're really glad you're here. You're not monitoring that as closely. So please do be understanding and also behave. Our first reader tonight is Juliet Kemp. Juliet Kemp is a queer, non-binary writer, pronouns they, them. They live in London by the river with their partners, kid, and dog. They're the author of the Marek fantasy series, and their short fiction has appeared in venues including Analog and Cosmas Infinities. Cosmas, I may need you to pronounce that for me when you come on. They were shortlisted for the WSPA Small Press Award in 2020. In their spare time, they knit, climbed, and tried to fit an ever-increasing number of plants into a microscopic back garden. They can be found on Twitter as Juliet K. Juliet, welcome.
Hiya. It's I think it's Cosmos, but I admit that I've only ever seen it written down. I've not met the editor nor heard it said. So
Yeah, I was so careful to make sure I was getting your names right, and then I look in your bios and go, oops. So, anyone associated with that, feel free to ping me later and give me what for about that. So Juliet, what are you reading for us tonight, which I think is tomorrow morning to you?
it is. It's 2 a.m. my time. Right now, I'm reading Opening Doors, which was printed in Cosmos Infinities, and I think I can drop a link in the Facebook thing later. Before I start, I'm just going to warn you. The dog, as mentioned in my bio, is very soundly asleep, snoring very loudly. I think the microphone will not pick this up, but I apologize if you hear canine snores.
That sounds very cute.
So two brief content warnings for this story. There is a brief reference to somebody being killed in the past, not in the story, and a reference to cancer diagnosis. So yeah, this is Opening Doors. Parrick wasn't waiting for her. He never was. Erin assumed it was deliberate, but like so many other things, she didn't ask. As the rover clicked into the airlock, she could see his back through the plastic of the small greenhouse bubble as he bent over his plants. He must have heard the rover, but he didn't turn around. She went down the ramp into the underground living rooms, safety box at her heels, sat on a stool and waited. Just like every other fourth soul, since the bubble had been built and Parrick confined to it, getting on for 2.5 Martian years now. Abruptly, Parrick appeared at the bottom of the ramp that led up to the greenhouse. You need a haircut. Hello to you too. I'm growing it out. Isn't that inconvenient under a helmet? Erin shrugged. I don't go outside the complex so much these days. We're all specialising more now. At the start, everyone had done some of everything, especially when they were first getting the bubble up. But things had changed since Parrick was exiled. She tried to keep him updated, to keep the door open. He sat on his own stool across the table from her. Spending all of your time in the gardens then? They often talked about plants. Parrick had to grow almost all his own food, and Erin was responsible for the perennial crops in the community's gardens back in the complex. Gardens above ground, housing below, and all of it under the bubble, which was just as well, since gardening in a helmet would be no fun. It was a useful topic, safe, interesting to both of them. The raspberries are doing well, Erin said, and the kitchen are drying the leaves for tea. The camellias still don't like it here. Yeah, well, who can blame them? I like it here, Erin said placidly. The fact that none of the herbal teas were tea was hardly enough to make her miss Earth. Oh, I meant to tell you, she remembered. The latest trend. It's beading this time. Total run on the craft supplies. Trends came and went more fiercely on Mars than Erin ever remembered them doing on Earth. Beading. Parrick sounded disbelieving. Yep. And the warehouse only had a tiny amount for people who like working with their hands, you know? All went in a day. The teenagers are trading beads around like they're some kind of illegal substance. Though they say they're not teenagers. They say they're 8 and 9 and 10. She still didn't know her own age in Martian without thinking about it, but these kids were growing up here. One of the teachers tried tenagers, but they didn't like that either. Anyway, the printers are booked to make more beads towards the end of next week, but obviously that's not fast enough. Parrick snorted. The things I miss out on, huh? He didn't have to miss out, probably. If he wanted, she could mediate again between him and the community, despite everything. 2 deaths to his name, and maybe it wasn't deliberate murder, but he'd known exactly what he was about. She'd still be willing to mediate. That was what she did. But he knew that already. She wasn't about to bring it up. That evening, she and Cleo sat on the sofa in their rooms, legs entangled, with a glass of Martian hooch apiece. It wasn't exactly beer. Hops, like camellia, were one of the plants that Erin and her team hadn't been able to get to thrive here. More like lightly fermented fruit juice, whatever they'd had extra of that season. It was a spare time project of Kieran, one of the doctors, the resource use enthusiastically endorsed by the rest of the community. This batch was mostly apple, and it was pretty good. I don't understand why you keep going out there, Cleo said. Her short, dark hair stood up around her face. Cleo still wore helmets a lot, out checking on the atlas formers and the machinery that sustained the complex. She looked tired today. Because being cut off from everyone else isn't the way to redeem people. They'd had this discussion often enough before, but Cleo always was the sort to prod at a scab, especially when she was tired and grouchy. It had been a few months since the last round, so this was about on schedule by Erin's reckoning. Cleo snorted. like that's ever going to happen. Well, maybe not, but Erin hesitated, thinking over her words. I suppose, on principle, I don't believe anyone can't or won't change wholly indefinitely if they're still connected, if they still have a way back. And if I believe that, I also believe I should put my money where my mouth is. She laughed and took a slug of hooch. I bet the kids don't like that idiom any more than they like teenagers. Put my social credit where my mouth is. Cleo ignored the distraction. Have you forgiven him? That's not the point. David died, Erin. Thibault died. Isn't that the point? And nothing was going to bring them back. Yes, Erin agreed, feeling the familiar tug of loss. David and Thibault had both been on the first shuttle out with her and Cleo. Only 100 of them. They'd all been so close. Parrick had been on that shuttle too. People change their minds? I don't... Erin paused. I suppose I believe that we are a community and we need to keep on giving people that chance. Cleo's fingers were tight on her mug. Drain on resources. Should have sent him back to Earth. What, and export our problems? That doesn't work. Erin gestured, palm up. But if you want it, propose it. Too expensive, Cleo said. Drain on resources either way. In theory, it was possible to go back. They had 2 shuttles, one from each of the trips out from Earth, and they could manufacture fuel if anyone proposed it, which no one had. They were out here for good, all of them. That was the point. Everyone, problems and all. Cleo sighed and put her head back against the couch, then sat up again and drained her mug. Anyway, top up. How's your apprentice getting on? Made me a beaded bracelet, Erin said, eyes comically wide, and was rewarded by Cleo's laughter. The next week didn't go quite as Erin had planned. 1 routine doctor's visit turned into 3 in rapid succession, and a whole host of discussions with Kieran about treatment and prognosis and next steps. Cleo argued with her when she asked Kieran to schedule a line insertion so she would be on time to visit Parrick afterwards. Surely she needn't in the circumstances, Cleo said. Erin hadn't even started chemo yet, for fuck's sake. She wasn't going to abandon everything just because some stupid cells were trying to take over her body. Parrick seemed awkward, that's all, drumming his fingers on the table. You seen the news from Earth? He asked. In the middle of a story, she was telling him about the graffiti some of the not teenagers had put up on the wall of the garden. They'd gone off beading. Most of it had stayed. Some of it Erin had negotiated with them to scrub off. She wasn't prudish, but there were limits. I see a bit, Erin said. Doesn't seem worth much time. I won't be going back. Plenty right here to keep me busy, especially now. Yeah, well, not like I've much else to do. Anyway, I meant the executions. Terrorists. Erin had seen that and felt sick about the whole business all the way through and hadn't read past the headlines. I saw it had happened, no more than that. Parrick was staring off at the wall to one side, failing even more obviously than usual to meet her eyes. You could have executed me. On Earth, he'd have been counted a terrorist. A hole blown in the bubble. David and Thibault dead before the emergency crew got there. No death penalty in the Accords, Erin said. Could have been changed. A couple of people had argued for that, but they hadn't gone as far as proposing it. If she hadn't been mediating, she'd have been arguing against. That's not how we do things on Mars. Whatever Earth does, we agreed when we came out here. You too, she added. Parrick finally looked back at her, his chin up, arms folded. You've never asked me why I did it. No, Erin agreed. I assume if you wanted me to know, you'd tell me. She sipped at her tea. Rosemary and lemon. Coaxing the citrus into fruiting was her most cherished achievement. So far, she made herself add. Plenty more to come, weren't there? They asked at the trial. Not technically a trial, a mediation. Like any other mediation she'd done, except not. Parrick on one side, refusing to talk. Everyone else on the other, raging and sorrowful and furious, and her trying to hold it all because that was the job. Her chest ached in memory, or Maybe that was the chemo line settling in. Parrot made an impatient gesture. Whatever you care to call it, they asked. And you didn't answer. I remember it well. Is that why you come out here, waiting for me to change my mind and tell you? No, I don't suppose you ever will. Did she even want to know? She tried not to. Expectations rarely helped anyone. He'd never asked before. He'd sat and spoken to her, at least a little, every soul, and he'd never asked why she was there. Why now? But since he was asking, I come out here because you're human and you're still part of our community, whether out here or in there, and it's not right for someone to be wholly alone. He didn't look impressed, but then he was hard to read. You've never asked before. He shifted in his seat, arms still folded. Didn't seem important. Well, I might not be able to come so often in the next few months. Parrick grabbed both half-full tea mugs, got up abruptly and turned to the sink. Fed up, are you? I've got cancer. To her horrified surprise, her vision blurred and she felt water in the corners of her eyes. She hadn't cried at all week, through all Kieran's explanations and Cleo holding her hand and trying to smile at her. Through the blur, she saw Parrick freeze, briefly, before he put the mugs down in the sink and turned around. Cancer. It's the healthy Martian atmosphere, she said, wiping irritably at her face. Next to no atmosphere, in fact, which was why they all burrowed underground, except apparently that wasn't enough. Or maybe it's not. Plenty of people on Earth get cancer, don't they? Maybe it's just me. Parrick sat down opposite her, and Erin put her head down on the table and cried, the way she hadn't in front of Cleo because of Cleo's worried face every time she thought Erin wasn't looking. Parrick sat and waited, staring at his hands. And when she was done, he fetched her tissues and made her another cup of rosemary tea, all without saying a word. I'm sorry, he said finally as she left. Leaving, she rested her head against the hard window of the Rover and shut her eyes. She was bone deep exhausted and she hadn't even started bloody chemo yet. When the Rover got back to its dock, she let the safety bot out, then tapped in a new destination. She'd take it all the way back home once, rather than walk. The Rover pulled out and tucked itself neatly onto the vehicle path to the above ground part of the complex, settling to its permitted speed. To one side were arches leading down to offices and workshops and living rooms. To the other, plants. This was the annuals here, not Erin's perennials. There was only one other vehicle out that Erin could see. A Rover piled with big boxes of something. The complex was still small enough that most people walked, especially in Martian gravity. Erin envisaged the future they planned. A hugely expanded bubble complex, as resources increased. A second complex out by the mountains. Maybe another shuttle or two from Earth even, depending on what happened down there. And eventually, maybe, the possibility of walking outside the complex without a helmet for the great-great-grandchildren of the not teenagers she passed, decorating another blank wall with half-empty paint buckets scrounged from other projects. She'd never see that, cancer or no cancer. The thought was oddly soothing. Mars would go on, with or without her. The Rover swung past the warehouse. She ought to stop and requisition some of the things Kieran had recommended to help her through chemo, but she couldn't face it. It pulled up outside her house, and she made herself get out, swipe herself through the arch, go down the ramp, smile at Cleo. It would all be fine. Before coming to Mars, Erin had thought a lot about whether this was the right thing to do with her life, about the risk of being here and the loss of everything and everyone she knew on Earth, everything she might have done on Earth, against what it would mean to be part of what they might build out here. Since they landed, she'd been busy, in the gardens, mediating, spending time with Cleo and her friends and the community, all 200 and change of them, including the kids. Her life was full. It didn't seem necessary to stop and assess it. Trundling towards Parrick's bubble after her second bout of chemo, she wondered for the first time since Earth about time and cost and loss and worth. She felt surprisingly okay for now, but however much Kieran said optimistic things about probabilities, should she be thinking more carefully about what she did with every fraction of her remaining time? Well then, time always was limited. Parrick commented on it over peppermint tea. Peppermint did just fine in Martian greenhouses. Peppermint did just fine everywhere. Why are you wasting your time out here with me? You've got cancer. Erin shrugged. Nothing's changed, really. You never know when you'll go, do you? David and Thibault hadn't. A great sorrow washed up inside her, surprising her with its intensity. Once she'd battled it down again, she said, conversationally, sometimes it's hard not to hate you, you know? Parrot didn't look surprised. Don't bother trying then. Get on and hate me, I should. I suppose I've chosen not to. His mouth twisted. Not that keen to feel like a charitable project, you know? I wouldn't say charitable. A reflection of my ethical beliefs, perhaps. No, not a reflection. An action. Ethics in action. Not sure that's much better. His shoulders were hunched. Erin's sorrow had washed away again, leaving behind it only the loss that never quite went away. Thibault had designed the bubble plastic. She thought of them every time she stood in the gardens and looked up at the sky. David had run the creche. He lived on, she supposed, in the not teenagers and the littler kids coming up behind them. I do enjoy our conversations, just sometimes I remember, and then I feel other things too. She gestured with her mug. Humans are complex creatures. We feel many things at once. I can like you and enjoy your company and still hate you, sometimes. Neither of them spoke for a while. Erin drank her tea and thought about living on in the lemon trees and the perennial kale, and in a very practical sort of way, in the compost that fed them. That's the most honest you've ever been with me, Parrot said eventually. Maybe dying suits you. Maybe it does. Erin traced the handle of her tea mug with a finger. Kieran says I'm probably not dying. Except, of course, we're all dying, aren't we? The one cold truth of life. Me, you, everyone else. Sure, but I'm honest already. I don't need the help. Erin squinted at him. Are you? Always? Parrot looked at her narrowly, opened his mouth, shut it again, then stood up and walked out of the room. Erin sat for a while. He didn't come back. When she got home, Cleo was cooking, banging pots around. Chemo had done something peculiar to Erin's taste buds, and she couldn't cope with the communal kitchen, which was frustrating for someone who'd always been proud of not being picky. Cleo had volunteered to cook. She enjoyed it, said it was good to have an excuse to use the extra resources. Erin didn't think the pot banging betrayed irritability with cooking. Erin was having plain noodles with a little ginger to settle her stomach. Ginger had coped with Mars much more readily than she'd expected. She sighed, just a tiny sigh as she sat, and that was what set Cleo off. Erin, you're tired, obviously, because you're having chemo and your hair's falling out. That was a low blow. Why the hell are you still spending energy on that man? Erin was indeed tired and fed up. She put down her chopsticks. Because if I don't, who else is going to? Everyone said, we don't want to be like Earth. We'll make something different, but you don't walk the walk, do you? You're talking like it's just, I don't know, willful laziness. I'm busy, we're all busy, trying to build what he tried to smash. Cleo snapped up a piece of carrot and chewed furiously on it. This is part of that though, Erin argued. It has to be. Just because it's difficult, you can't just stop when it's hard. Thibault spent 5 years on that damn bubble membrane, and he put a hole in it in seconds. Cleo's chin went up. Look, on Earth he'd be dead. We just exiled him. He still has warehouse privileges. I know, I take deliveries to him. He won't change. He won't be sodding redeemed. He won't even say why he did it. I don't care. That's not the point. The point is not to look away. The point is to keep the door open. And if this is it, if he lives and dies out there, never comes back, is never safe to come back, what's the point? Erin put her bowl down and spread her hands wearily. The point is to keep the door open. Cleo rubbed the heel of her hand against her forehead. You really think it's worth it? Wouldn't do it otherwise. Sure as hell wouldn't right now. She shut her eyes, suddenly unable to face even plain noodles with ginger. Look, can we just leave the social ethics for now? Have we still got edibles left? I really fancy getting a bit high. It was doctor recommended even. Maybe it would help her appetite. Cleo visibly let the argument go, her shoulders falling. We have, and if we hadn't, I'd go get you some. Come on, let's sit down. I'll finish mine on the couch and put yours aside, and maybe you'll want it later. Or I'll cook some more. Thank you, Erin said. Cleo smiled crookedly over at her. Well, need you around, don't I? Keeping me honest. She put an arm around Erin, and Erin let herself relax into her familiar embrace. It was fourth sol again. Cleo went to the southwest exit, and the rover carried her and the safety bot 6 kilometres to Parek's bubble. The plants in the greenhouse above ground, when she reached it, looked like they were thriving. Erin would know what they were. Cleo just noticed that the rover's left tread badly needed tuning. Downstairs, Parek was in the living area, sitting on one side of a table, an empty stool on the other. Is she? He stopped. She couldn't read his expression. She's alive, Cleo said. Just bloody ill, bloody stubborn, and someone had to come out here if I wanted her not to. She needs to rest. Right. Cleo sat down on the stool. I'll be coming out for a while, till she's better. If you want. You don't have to let me in. I always let Erin in. Yes, well, she's a better person than me. There was a silence. Why are you here? He asked finally. His hands rested on the table in front of him, fingers interlaced, thumb rubbing restlessly against his knuckle. He didn't look at her. Because Erin's a better person than me. I don't always agree with her, but she never, ever gives up. And sometimes she needs saving from herself. She hesitated. And because she keeps me honest. Yeah, Parek said softly. So, Cleo said eventually, want to know what the kids have taken up now they're bored of graffiti? Yeah, Parek met her eyes. All right. That's the end. And I hope you enjoyed it.
That story was a complex creature all its own. I liked it very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
We always end up taking a breath between the stories, and sometimes I think I'm not going to do it. It seems cheesy, and the story does it to me anyway. So, our next reader is Cath Schaff-Stump. Cath Schaff-Stump writes fantasy for children and adults. She writes funny stories, dark stories, and everything in between. She is the author of the Clarion Scrolls series and the Abigail Wrath Versus series. Cath lives and works in Iowa. During the day, she teaches English at a local community college. More of her fiction has been published by Paper Golem Press, Daydreams Dandelion Press, and in the Mammoth Book of Dieselpunk. You can find her online at Facebook, Goodreads, Amazon, at Cath Schaff-Stump on Twitter, and cathschaffstump.com. I'll drop that link in it too. Follow Cath's Kindle Vella serial, The Autumn Warrior and The Ice Sword. Cath.
Hey there.
Hi, welcome.
So tonight's story is not yet available in print, but it is in an upcoming fall anthology. And it is based on a prompt. I got the prompt, Damned Walt Disney. So when you hear the line Damned Walt Disney in the story, you'll know where the story comes from. Here we go. Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. The scent of gardenias ran the length of the gravel driveway. Light conversation and children's shrieks drifted from the backyard to the car where Marnie and Buzz sat on the soft cloth seats of his baby blue Mercury Midnight. Buzz handed Marnie one of 2 Coca-Colas. Marnie took the bottle and aimed the straw protruding from the top of it toward her white lips. Thanks, Buzz, she said. You're swell. Buzz was Florida tan. He was a recently graduated basketball player, Lanky but muscled. In 2 years, Marnie could see him evolving into Charles Atlas. "You're swell," said Buzz, his eyes full of chivalric admiration. Marnie sipped the cola, then lowered the straw. She leaned in for an innocent kiss, her lips connecting with his, the tiny electric zap between them stinging. His lips tasted of plastic, smooth and slick latex. "Say," said Buzz. "I like you, Buzz," said Marnie, staring into his sky blue eyes. "I like you a lot." "Yes," said Buzz. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down like it was floating in a Halloween cauldron. Marnie leaned in and kissed Buzz fully and thoroughly. Buzz backed away, startled, dropping the bottle, brown liquid splorching onto his rolled up blue jeans, the bottle bouncing hollowly on the plastic floor mats of the car. "Say," said Buzz, you're a swell girl, but I don't think we should." Marnie planted her hand firmly on Buzz's chest, then traced a heart over the top of Buzz's striped t-shirt with her index finger. "Buzz," said Marnie, let's go all the way." Buzz plastered himself against the closed car door away from Marnie. Marnie advanced across the seat. "No," said Buzz, The money moment for Marnie was Buzz's electronic stutter. His eyes fluttered and clicked, and Marnie smelled burning wires and ozone. The light went out from behind Buzz's eyes. Marnie scooted back to her side of the midnight, rolled her window down, and tossed her bottle of cola outside, where it shattered and fizzed on the gravel, ebbing out its last life's blood. She bit her thumbnail, examining the task at hand. From the glove compartment, she pulled out a case and selected a pick, which she inserted up Buzz's amazingly lifelike nose. "Goddamn Walt Disney," she said, jiggling the pick. A mechanism behind Buzz's ear clicked, and his face swung like a back door. Marnie fumbled in the glove compartment for her genie pad and accessed Buzz's data stream. Finally, there it was, the master schedule for the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. Dot placed the plastic Tupperware cover over her famous coconut cake and snapped the plastic buckles into the place for the bottom tray. "Say," she said to Imogene, "would you pack the wiener winks?" "Okie dokie," said Imogene. Imogene was the latest style animatronic. Julie and Tommy were now teenagers, so last year Rick and Dot had replaced their old Harriet Hippo 5A house helper. Since Dot spent most of the time around Imogene, she wanted someone who looked more like a bridge partner. Imogene had become Dot's closest confidant and best drinking buddy. "Say," said Dot to Imogene, "I'm thinking about going shopping today after Ladies' Aid. Would you like to come with me?" "I would," said Imogene, "only you know, Dorothy, I'm 5A house helper Imogene. My parameters of operation are only—" "Silly me," said Dot. "Sometimes you're just so gosh darned real, I forget." Dot stacked the pastel pink cake. Oh, hold that again. Dot stacked the pastel pink plastic cake carrier and the Robin's blue container holding the wiener winks. She glanced around the kitchen as she removed her apron, her eyes lingering on the food processor, the microwave oven, and the white bisque refrigerator. "You can only operate at 307 Maple Court. How could I forget?" Dot had to remember to take a Valium before she went out, so the emptiness and uncertainty would recede behind her smile. In the bathroom, off the kitchen, Dot pricked her hair. She swallowed her pill with a swig of lukewarm water from a plastic-coated Dixie cup. The fluorescent bathroom light washed her out, so she pinched her cheeks, powdered her nose, and applied a fresh coat of man-killer red to her lips, as if she would need to kill any men. "Say, Imogene," said Dot, wandering back into the kitchen, "would you mind awfully making dinner tonight? Just in case I'm a skosh late. Rick would understand her not being home if dinner were on the table anyway." "You bet," said Imogene enthusiastically. "How's about a pot roast with carrots and potatoes and apple pie for dessert?" She winked an electronic eye at Dot. "A way to a man's heart is through his stomach." "That's just peachy," said Dot. Dot shrugged her way into her cobalt suede coat and closed the single strategic button with one hand. She pressed the call button on her wrist bracelet and slid her handbag back to her elbow. "Fine," said Imogene. "A peach pie." "Oh, Imogene," said Dot, rolling her eyes. Everything felt dreamy and soft as she thought of the Valium, and as the thought of the Valium mellowed her nerves in advance of the actual effect of the drug. Dot tucked the cakes and the winks on her chin, fumbled with the door handle, and was out on the sidewalk in her cul-de-sac. She tapped her foot, leaning back on her heels while she waited. A carriage pulled by two robot horses pulled up alongside. The horses had eyelashes and wore flower pots for hats. "Where to today, Miss Garrett?" asked one of the horses. Dot smiled beatifically, then licked her teeth to make sure she didn't have man-killer red on them. "Cinderella's castle, please." Paper bunting was strung along the walls. This year, the 60th anniversary of the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, the recreation rooms had been made over in midnight blue and glitter for the walls and plush blue carpet underfoot. A suite of animatronic fairy cleaners flitted from room to room, keeping them free of crumbs and cobwebs. At the front of every door stood its own animatronic doorman. "Good afternoon," said the doorman, tipping his hat as Dot slipped into the room. "Can I take your coat?" "I'll bring it back for you," said Dot, as she negotiated around him with the totem of Tupperware. "Give me just a tick." "As you say, Miss Garrett." Now that he'd heard her, his conversation would be personalized each time he heard her voice. Technology always made one feel included. They were in the basement of Cinderella's castle. Over the years, some of the utility tunnels under the park had been turned into social spaces for gatherings like Cub Scouts or the American Legion. In their rooms, tables were laid out for the potluck, covered in chiffon and accented with centerpieces. Marlene was this year's president. Dot was happy about that because Marlene had the good housekeeping touch that many of the women in Ladies' Aid lacked. Each table was laid out by function. Salads were organized first, then crockpots of a variety of canned alchemy magic, and finally breads. Desserts were on a special island of their own, with a variety of tiered pedestals arranged at varying heights. The founding father of the city was fondest of desserts. Each woman bought 2 entrees, and the park provided the rest of the repast, whose leftovers would be swept away to the deserving after the meeting. Eloise, Dot's neighbor in Maple Court, was removing the cover from her dish designed specially to hold deviled eggs as Dot stepped up to squeeze her Wienerwinks into a space in the cavalcade of food. "Your Wienerwinks," said Eloise with gusto. "How marvelous." Dot knew that Eloise wasn't sincere. Dot's Wienerwinks used crescent dough from the freezer case rather than just bread and cheese. And technically, they were more of a pig in the blanket affair, but Dot's mother had always called them Wienerwinks. Dot sighed and settled her shoulders. There was no pleasing some people. However, her coconut sprinkled tall white cake was not without its enthusiastic supporters among the ladies, and Dot had to admit that Eloise's usual offering of celery and lime jello was no competitor in the dessert category, so Dot could be generous and take barbs against her Wienerwinks in stride. Dot clacked with confidence on her heels, put the cake stand on the highest dessert tower, and unveiled her coconut cake. Women in the room oohed and awed. "Oh," said Eloise flatly, "how wonderful, your coconut cake." "It wouldn't be a potluck without Dot's coconut cake," said Marlene, who slipped up, placing a welcoming gloved hand on Dot's arm. Marlene handed her coat to the doorman F7 animatronic, who hovered nearby. "Thank you, Marlene," said Dot. "I think it turned out rather well this time." She had spent 4 hours making sure the coconut flakes were arranged for optimum snowflake effect. "Did you have Imogene make it for you?" asked Eloise. "The coconut is so even." It was an unwritten rule of Ladies' Aid that you never used an animatronic to cook food for a potluck. It was cheating, like catering. "No," said Dot, pretending to be admiring her cake. In some arenas, effort mattered. "Well, I think it's just stunning," said Marlene. "Why don't you give doorman F7 your coat and we'll all get started. We have a lot of business to see to today." After a brief luncheon, the ladies would get down to discussing today's business, charitable donations for the Friends of Homes. Today, they were discussing the care facility that took care of the retired Friends of Goofy. Younger, sprier Goofies wore the uniform now, and as wearing animals in the park was a monastic pursuit. The friends of various creatures relied on the goodwill of the community to support them after their service. Dot threaded her scarf through the sleeve of her coat and handed her coat to doorman F7. "Here you go," she said. "Thank you, Miss Garrett," said doorman F7. A fairy with a washcloth flew into the room, followed by a stream of glitter. It stopped near a drop of coffee by the urn and wiped it away with a piece of gossamer spider web. As the fairy exited the room, a young woman passed it in the doorway. She was Maud, her bleached hair white, blonde, and straight, bangs cut across her forehead. Her eye makeup was dark in the creases with a deliberate line below her eye, emphasized by a layer of fake lashes. Her dress was a silver miniskirt, and with her opaque white hose and black go-go boots, the young woman seemed to be dressed for Tomorrowland, but here she was instead. She held a tray of obviously purchased macaroons, half dipped in chocolate. The gasp among the women of the room must have removed all the air. Brown dots danced across Dot's vision. Her hand reached out to steady herself on the soft back of an upholstered chair. "Hello, dear," said Marlene, slipping forward. "I think you might be in the wrong place." "No," said the mod girl. She placed her tray of macaroons in front of her like a shield. "This is Ladies' Aid." "Well, yes," said Marlene. She looked at the other 12 women in the room for support. "That's right." "The thing is," said Eloise, "well, we're the ladies. We're all ladies." The girl's lips were white, coated in mod lipstick. "And I'm not a lady." Dot didn't register what she planned to do until she was doing it. No, sweetie, you're a lady." She stuck out her gloved hand. "I'm Dot." "I'm Marty." Marty didn't extend her hands, clutching the macaroons so tightly Dot could see her knuckles whitening. "Why don't you sit with me?" said Dot. "Let's put your macaroons right here next to my cake." "You know," said Eloise, "I hate to be a stickler about the rules, but the macaroons were purchased in the park." The other women looked at Marlene for guidance. Dot felt the breath in the room hold again, just like before a summer rain. "Oh, just let her put them there, Eloise," Marlene said too quickly. "Move your Jell-O off your pedestal." "My Jell-O is homemade," Eloise protested. "It's not really a dessert," said Dot. "Jell-O is a salad. Everyone knows that." Eloise stiffly picked up the platter, stepped to one side of the table down to the salads, and dropped the plate on the table. The Jell-O mold jiggled dangerously, dancing over the edges of the plate. "Okay, girls," said Marlene, "let's get started. Everyone grab a plate." No one moved. Dot grabbed Marty's bare shoulder and guided her toward the sturdy recycled plastic plates. "Say," Dot said, "those macaroons look delicious. I'll have one." "Isn't there a rule about eating your vegetables first?" said Marnie. "Between us girls," said Dot, smiling pleasantly, "not at Ladies' Aid." The best thing to do in an awkward situation like this was to fall backwards into the refreshing currents of Valium. "This might come as a surprise to you," said Marnie, "but I've never been to a Ladies' Aid meeting, so I wouldn't know." The young woman smiled. Electric, Dot sighed happily. She was such a beautiful girl. "There are rules about these things," said Eloise from the other side of the entree table. She was tonguing a meatball out of a crock pot. "How did you get here?" A splorch of mashed potatoes held over Marnie's plate before they landed in a glop. "It was in my schedule for today," said Marnie. "Wait," said Marlene as she poured coffee into the styrofoams. "What? I don't believe you," said Eloise. "Now, Eloise," said Marlene, "there's no reason to be rude. I think she's breaking a rule. She's not where she should be." Dot laughed. "This is easily resolved. Show us your schedule, Marnie." "I don't think I should have to," said Marnie. "She shouldn't be here," said Eloise. "Doorman?" Marnie slipped a crock pot out of the way and balanced her plate on the edge of the table. She tapped the button on her bracelet and her schedule displayed in the air in front of her. "See," said Dot, "right there, Ladies' Aid." Dot felt triumphant for inexplicable reasons. "Now, come on, let's all enjoy our lunch." Dot guided Marnie to a comfortable seat. Marlene started the discussion with a valiant effort after downing 2 cups of coffee. Marnie attacked the green beans topped with mushroom soup and mashed potatoes with the vigor of someone who had never had a mom to cook for her. Dot glanced at the lonely macaroon on her plate and took a bite. Dot took off her gloves and placed them beside a paper napkin. She broke off a piece of the cookie and chewed thoughtfully. She relished the combination of coconut and chocolate and wondered if there were something she could do to combine flavors in her own cake. "Delicious," she squeezed Marnie's shoulder. "I'm sure she'll have loads to say about how to help the Friends of Goofy nursing facility," said Eloise, taking her own seat. "Do you have any ideas?" said Marlene. "We usually like to send the Goofies something to brighten their day." "Homemade paper flowers," said Marnie. "I don't think so," said Dot. "Those are more appropriate for the girls at the orphanage." One of the ladies dropped her fork. A fairy flitted into the room and darted to the floor to pick it up. Dot chewed on another delicious bite of cookie. It seeped into her consciousness that everyone was staring at her in an uncomfortable silence. "We always appreciated the flowers you sent to the island of Lost Girls," said Marnie. Eloise pointed a finger at Marnie. Orphan, she said in a husky whisper. Orphan. Marlene raised a napkin to her mouth to spit out a bite of food. Oh, she said. Oh, dear. Her hands were shaking. Doorman F7? I knew it, said Eloise. I knew it. Dot finished the macaroon. That was the best cookie I have ever had, she pronounced. Doorman F7 stepped away from the door. Is there a problem, Miss Logan? Yes, said Marlene. I'm afraid an orphan has lost her way. Would you mind taking her back home? Doorman F7 tapped a button on the side of his head. I need the Technicolor fairy, said Doorman F7. An unauthorized wish has come true. I repeat, an unauthorized wish has come true. Many of the ladies were moving away from the tables, their plates of potluck lunch congealing. Eloise stood, her fingers extended like an accuser in the French Revolution. Marlene held her ground, although she was standing too, trying to stay rational. Dot remained in her seat. Marnie walked over to the dessert island. The entire Ladies' Aid Society shuffled away from her like she was contagious. I wanted to see you, said Marnie. I wanted to understand what kind of a woman would part willingly with her child. Marlene's lips thinned. We are women who made mistakes, said Marlene. Society has given us a second chance to make good. The community has given you a second chance. You should never have come here. When You Wish Upon a Star started in the background, soft across the speakers, swelling to take over the room in a crescendo of an entrance. The Technicolor fairy appeared in the room in a shower of gold light and glitter, her skin alabaster, her hair spun gold, her leotard a glorious lime, and her wings all the vibrant hues of the Technicolor spectrum. Oh dear, she said, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. She waved a wand at Marnie. Obviously, you are the girl who hacked Cookout Buzz 12E914.2 today. You were very naughty. I was naughty, said Marnie. I wanted to meet my mother. Now, said the fairy, it's best for everyone involved if you and your mother are separated. A woman who conceives out of wedlock could never be a good mother. That's not true, said Eloise. We all have families now. Oh, yes, said the Technicolor fairy, most assuredly. What happens to Marnie now, says Dot. She goes back to the orphanage. I wouldn't concern myself if I were you, Miss Garrett. Two men in sharp black suits entered the room. Marnie will eventually come to terms with her place in the community. She is only to accept her place and she will blossom. Marnie looked frantically around the room. Mother, she said, don't let them do this. Marlene sighed. You know it's for the best. Whoever your mother is, she certainly wouldn't want to accept a willful, ungrateful girl. The two men closed in on Marnie. She ran, putting the potluck table between them and her. Doorman F7 blocked her way out stoically. Dot hummed to herself for a moment while she put on her gloves. She watched the men corner Marnie. Each one grabbed an arm and marched her toward the doors. My apologies, ladies, said the Technicolor fairy. I know this must have been painful for you. Dot left the table and moved over toward her cake. Say, said Dot, what would happen if Marnie's mother decided she wanted to take responsibility for her? I wouldn't worry about it, said the Technicolor fairy. It would be best to let this incident pass. Everyone should leave the past in the past. Right, said Dot. Only, Dot picked up the combination cake cutter spatula and brandished it. I've decided I want to take my daughter home. The rain drenched them. One of those surprising Florida deluges that happened on even a sunny day. It would pass. Dot and Marnie sat on a bench at a bus stop. Marnie's knees were drawn up to her chest and she rested her head on her arms. Oh dear, said Dot. I believe my hair will never survive this, to say nothing of my makeup. Marnie turned her head to look at Dot, her hair bedraggled. I didn't know they would expunge us, she said. Dot pulled her compact out of her purse, routine winning over futility. Yes, she said. My, I look aside. No more Dole Whips, said Marnie. No people mover. No Country Bears Jamboree. No, said Dot. She put her compact away. A real family is the most important thing. You and I have been alone with our regrets long enough. Why did you do it, said Marnie. Give up your family? A perfect pretend family to keep a woman in her place, said Dot reflectively. Drugs to soften the blow of your fall. You can convince yourself of a lie if people around you want you to believe it. Dot took off her hat and wrung it out. She laughed as the net and delicate artificial cherries ripped and tore. Why did you come to us? At the Island of Lost Girls, Marnie said. We had a dating simulation. I like to visit it, not because of the date, but because of the sounds of the family in the background. Oh, said Dot. She brightened. Say, when we get settled, we'll have a cookout, if they do that kind of thing out here. Marnie wiped Dot's falling bangs out of her eyes. I don't understand you, said Marnie. It's hard for children to understand their parents. You're not my mother, said Marnie. Why did you keep them from taking me back? Dot wasn't certain she knew the answer to that question. Not really. So in the end, she decided to avoid it. When we have our cookout, I can teach you to make pigs in a blanket, just like my mother taught me. Okay, said Marnie tentatively. The rain fell and they sat. Or, said Dot, you can take a different bus than me. Go wherever you want, if you're not interested. The rain pounded on the pavement. Only, said Dot, I wish you would stay.
Gosh, until the end, that was really, really terrifying.
I didn't want to be too mean. It was a...
I see funny and dark in the same place, definitely. Great stories tonight. So different, but both so strong, so powerful in their own way. Thank you both. Next week is also going to be excellent. Next week, we have Stephen Case and Premi Mohammed reading from their work. I do recommend checking Story Hour 2020, the day of the reading, for any changes. Doesn't happen very often. StoryHour2020.com is also a good place to learn about upcoming authors, because we do this, as I may have mentioned, pretty much every Wednesday. You can watch any programs you may have missed, watch this one a few more times, however you like, on Facebook at the Story Hour page. We'll also have a direct link going out later over social media. Juliet, Cath, thank you so much for joining us in what is actually pretty late in both of your times and sharing your stories with us.
Thank you.
It is truly our pleasure to have you.
I can say thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. I hope you'll both come again. And all of you who were here with us, all of you who are watching later, thank you for being part of Story Hour. Thank you for helping us spinning the fictive dream together. Good night.